Well, for the last few years, if there's one thing that signals the beginning of the end of the gardening season, it's Banana Day. So sadly, today is the day that the red Abyssinian bananas need to come out of the ground. And this year it's plural because I added a second one. Now the one behind me here is the original banana. This will be its third winter that I'm storing it. It has gone well so far. And actually the timing of today is perfect because we got a light frost in some parts of the yard, not all of it, some parts of the yard last night. So you can see that the leaves have sort of folded. They got nipped by frost. I happen to actually be out at 4 o'clock in the morning and noticed the ground was frosty. And I thought, well, here we go. I guess it's time. It was going to happen today, whether we got a frost or not. But I always like it if the leaves can get a touch of frost because I feel like that sends a plant the message that it's time to go into dormancy. I've done videos on storing these bananas for the last 2 years, but I'm going to do it again because this is a tradition now. So we will go through the storing process again. This one, banana number one, did not get as big as the one in the pot. I think the one in the pot just gets more attention. It gets water all the time. I mean, that was the case when I grew this one in a pot. It got much bigger there. I do like having this banana here quite a bit. But the first year I stored this plant, I actually pulled it out of the pot with all the leaves intact. And I did that, I think, just because I wanted to see the sheer size of this when it was standing on ground level. That is not a smart way to do it because it's a major pain to hassle. So the first step is we go in there with the trusty bread knife. This bread knife have served these bananas well, as the bread in my house. And I'm going to cut off the leaves. If you've seen me do this in the past, you will notice I've never left this before. This would be the next leaf that will emerge. Normally, I would just chop this off, straight, right about here, right where the leaves sort of start to come out. I'm going to try this year to do this and leave the center leaf, and I'll tell you why. Every time I cut so the leaf that will emerge first in spring is already in there. And so when you cut it here, you're actually cutting that leaf in half. So the very first leaves that come out are actually cut. And it takes a long time for the banana to put on enough growth before you can cut off those half leaves. And it's not a great look. This year, I'm going to attempt to leave this intact to see if that helps. If we get halfway through winter and this is looking like a real problem, I can always cut this then. I don't think it's a problem. So I'm going to try to leave this, well, like it is right here. I think that storing these Ensentes is very much like storing dahlias in that there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. And one way is not necessarily more correct than another. So if you have been doing this and you do it a different way, by all means, share what you do because I'm always interested in seeing that. But I will just say that you shouldn't change what you're doing because of what I'm doing. And I'm always willing to do an experiment on things because I always figure with these plants, I mean, I can always go buy another one, right? I mean, I bought it once, I could buy it again. So it's always worth a little bit of an experiment. So the next step here is we got to dig this baby up. One thing I always forget is how heavy these things are. And I mean, look at the roots. There's not a lot of roots there. There's some soil left in those roots, not a ton. It's not the roots that weigh a ton. It is the actual meristem of this plant, which is so full of water, it weighs an absolute ton. So I cannot move this one any farther until I get some help. So might as well go work on the other one in the meantime. Okay, now we move on to banana number 2. I think I started calling her Chiquita because she was small when she started, but she is a big girl now. Far outgrew the other one, I think. You can tell she's looking a little rough. First of all, this one, we just had a lot of wind this year. This one, the other one is in a far more protected area. This is quite a windy spot. And just the other day, we had a big old west wind come, and it was really blowing around. So the leaves are quite shredded. I don't mind the look. I think it looks kind of fun and funky. Also, it's the end of the season, so it really doesn't matter. Now, much like the first year that I grew one of these here, it has basically taken up most of the room in the pot. So for instance, right here is Fiona Sunrise Jasmine, which I was going to save, but that is basically underneath this. So I don't know if it'll come up or not. We might totally lose it. I mean, this is a 36-inch pot, and the stem here has taken up, I mean, it's basically a hand width, the side of the pot from the edge of the stem. So it was 3 years ago that I planted the banana when I first got it in this pot, and it was great. And then last year I did something different there because I don't like to repeat things, and I really missed the banana in this pot. And I have to say, I really think the banana is such a good call for this pot, partly because it helps with the scale of our house. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So since our house sits quite high on the foundation, there's quite a few steps into it. To get some scale here, it's always strange if there's a plant over here that's quite short. But with this actually gets almost to the top of the little portico roof and over the roof line of the house, which I think helps add scale to this whole area. Plus, I mean, why not have a huge statement at your front door? I've shown this before, but it's always amazing to see how much water is stored in the stems of these plants. So this is what it looks like when you cut it open, kind of like this little honeycomb. And like, you can just squeeze, well, it's like gonna squirt me in the face. And you open it up and water just pours out of there. So this is the challenge when it comes to storing these, because rot is your big concern with these. Okay. Amen? Sure.
You ready?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the storage method that I use is basically the one that is outlined in Marianne Wilburn's book, Tropical Plants and How to Love Them. That's sort of my tropical plant Bible. And actually, it's that book that actually made me realize that I could actually grow stuff like this. So it's been fairly important. So much like when you store your dahlia tubers, the key is that you need enough moisture, but not too much moisture, because when you store these plants in a dormant state, either one can kill them. So if they're too dry, they desiccate and they die. If they're too wet, they rot and they die. So the goal is to find some happy in-between place. And that is where the towel comes in. So you'll notice that we took big pots, lined them with a garbage bag, also helpful for managing the amount of water in and out, followed by an old towel. What the towel does is soak up additional water and then actually has water sitting there to go back in when it needs more water. I know this sounds kind of corny. I'll just say that now, having done that for 2 years, I find that it really does work. Then they go into the same area of my basement where I store my dahlias. So I have this little alcove off of a corner of our basement. It's where our well pump is and a few other things. And it's a small room, but it stays cooler than the rest of the basement because it's actually surrounded on 3 sides by the outside. Technically, it's underneath our deck, but it gives you an idea of it not being as warm as the rest of the basement. It's also dark, and what I do to make sure that happens is I've got a couple of doors that I created just out of cheap hinges and foam insulation board that I can close, so it will stay dark in there even if there are lights on in the basement, because dark is also important. These guys will grow quickly if they are exposed to light, and the last thing you want these things to do is to start growing in the middle of winter, because then you're in trouble. Now, theoretically, you could overwinter these as like house plants, but whose house is big enough for bananas that size? Oh, no, you got it.
Definitely heavier.
Oh, we need some air in those. Oh, are you okay? We need air in those tires. Okay, it's going to be tight in here this year with the second banana. It's normally I have the banana. I'm able to like jam the bananas back in the corner, and that is not working this year. So there's a lot of. Let's hope we don't need any like work on the well or anything. One little problem with my plan to leave those top stems, there is a height issue here, and they're all bent over. I don't know what we're gonna do about that. I'll have to ponder that. So anyway, this is their winter home. This is where they will be. They will be joined by dahlias and eucomis and the datura, which I'll bring down. So it's a little room that will hold a lot of stuff. Oh, just a quick note, if you are doing this, if you're going to try this, here's what you need to know. These things look like death when they come out of storage in spring. Well, the first year I brought it out, it looked really bad. And it made it just fine. So just know they're not going to be pretty when they come out on the other end. All right, so we will see these guys again in April or so when I pot them up and keep them inside to get some stabilizing roots before it's warm enough to plant them out, which is usually mid-June. I'm really crossing my fingers I can get them out earlier than that next year, but we'll see. All right, thank you for watching. Thank you for following along with the Banana Chronicles. Have a great day in your garden. Bye-bye. There's so much dirt in my mouth.